Representative Don Mayhew, a Republican, represents parts of Miller and Pulaski counties, District 124 in the Missouri House of Representatives. He was elected to his first two-year term in November 2018. In addition to his legislative duties, Mayhew, a licensed survey and engineer, is the owner of a small engineering and surveying company. He has served as the Pulaski County Surveyor for 10 years. Representative Mayhew has served on the Crocker School Board, including a term as president of the board. He has served on the Pulaski County Republican Central Committee. He has served on the board of Habitat for Humanity and the Crocker Park Board, and he has chaired the Pulaski County Justice Center Task Force. Mayhew also is a member of the NRA. I'm tired just reading this. This is amazing. Representative Mayhew graduated in 1991 with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Missouri-Rolla, now Missouri S&T. Born in Crocker, Mayhew still resides there with his wife, Deanna. They have 4 adult children and 8 grandchildren.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Definitely the longest introduction I've ever went through. Are you sure you didn't have my dad on that?
I was just handed what to read. I just do what I'm told.
I think you sent it to me.
Well, I appreciate it. You don't know how much this warms my heart to see a crowd this big here on this.
Every week?
And then heard that it's every week. So that's just amazing. That's amazing. But that's the only way we're going to take this country back. I tell people all the time when I go to these meetings, it's a whole lot easier to keep it than it is to take it back. And we're in the take it back mode right now, folks, unfortunately. Well, as you've already heard, I'm an engineer and a surveyor by trade, which means that I'm dual licensed. I can go broke twice as fast as the next guy. And I'm also a grandpa 8 times, and if that don't make you broke, then nothing will. I have 8 great grandkids, they're good grandkids. I didn't say anything about my 4 kids because they weren't so great because they had to suffer with me as their dad. But so we'll just jump right into this. I happen to be having a conversation with Mike. I don't know, it's been 3 or 4 months back now, Mike. I know it was after session. And we have common concerns about how our government works up in the state capitol. And one of those is how the people of the state of Missouri are represented. We got a problem. There's way too much money that influences what we do up in the state capitol. And, you know, if that was all for good, I probably wouldn't complain too much. But unfortunately, what happens is special interest take precedent over the people of the state of Missouri. And, you know, if people want to affect change, our Constitution provided a method to do that with the initiative petition process. Well, as we've seen, George Soros takes good advantage of our initiative petition process, but we don't. And the reason for that is George got a lot of money, but you don't. And so how do you affect change when your government won't respond to you as a citizen? It's only through that initiative petition process. But that takes a lot of work. If you don't have money, you got to put in the sweat equity. So is everybody familiar with how the initiative petition process works?
No.
So anybody can submit a proposal to the Secretary of State. And, sorry, that was my wife calling. I can call her back. That's probably the last time I'm ever going to get away with saying that.
Brandon, no. He comes up missing.
Yeah, right. So anybody can submit language on anything to the Secretary of State. Then the Secretary of State passes that over to the Attorney General and to the Auditor for their comments. Once that's done, the Secretary of State permits you, I shouldn't say it that way, notifies you that you can go to collecting signatures for your initiative petition. Okay, now there's the tough part, getting in. So for an initiative petition on an HJ, well, we wouldn't call it an HJR, but a constitutional change, right now is going to take 160,000 signatures. Okay, now the reality is it's really 320 to 330,000 signatures, because there's going to be a lot of people sign a petition that aren't registered voters, or they're not registered voters in Missouri. So you have to collect a lot more than you need. All right. Well, there's some strategies for that. Most initiative petitions that have been passed in the last 3 years have all been the result of a special interest providing the money to pay people to do that. That doesn't sound like a will of the people thing, right? That doesn't sound like people forcing their government to respond to their needs, right? That sounds to me like the exact same problem we've got up in Jeff City. Way too much money and not enough people that will do the work for their constituents. All right. So I had this HJR last year. Silly me, I thought that a thing as obvious as HJR 37, which I'll find you the pertinent place. Let me give you a little background on the reason why we needed to do this. So MoDot sued the state of Missouri. Said that the state legislature, whose only constitutional duty is the budget, can't tell them what to do with their money. And they pretty much said it like that. And I had to remind them that it ain't your money.
Right.
This is the people of the state of Missouri's money. So I had a bill that I had to threaten people in order to get it heard in a committee over on the Senate side. It passed straight party line out of my committee. We passed it on the floor of the House of Representatives with 101 votes. Now, it takes 82 to move something over to the Senate. There's 163 members, of which 57 are Democrats. Okay? So in other words, we pretty much had a caucus priority going, right? But 101 votes only takes 82 to move something over to the Senate. So in other words, the House of Representatives agreed with me that it's the people's money and the people need to weigh in on how we spend that money. Unfortunately, the Senate didn't agree with us. Mike was one of three senators, the chair was there, who even bothered to attend that committee hearing. All right, so what does HJR 37 do? Well, simply does this. It takes the words stands appropriated away from MoDOT and forces them, just like every other department, to appear before the budget committee and propose their budget. That, folks, by the way, is the checks and balances of how this whole thing works. Commissions, the Highway Commission, the Conservation Commission, the Public Service Commission are the most anti-constitutional things that have ever been done in the state of Missouri. Does everyone know how the Highway Commission works? There's 6 members who are appointed by one guy, the governor of the state of Missouri. Now, back when that was done, back in the 30s, the idea was we're going to take politics out of transportation investment so that the Speaker of the House doesn't get the road paved in front of his house and your potholes never get fixed down in Stoddard County or wherever, right? Tell me which is the more political process, requiring 82 people in the House of Representatives and 18 people in the Senate to pass a budget, or having 6 unelected bureaucrats. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not even bureaucrats. They got their job by patronage. These are typically folks who have donated to the governor's campaign, right? Appointed by this one elected person. Which one has the most politics in it? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Those people are unaccountable to you at all. I am. I was elected by 37,000 people, well, at least 50% of the registered voters representing 37,000 people. These guys didn't get elected by anybody. Now, it becomes real problematic when you know that they are not subject to the same gift rules that Mike and I are subject to. They can go to any meeting anywhere and have dinner on the house from anybody, including big consultants and big contractors. So if I'm a big consultant, big contractor, which would I rather do? Lobby 82 members of the House of Representatives or 6 unelected guys? Okay. Well, because of our checks and balances that are built into our system, right? What the Constitution said originally, it's absolutely necessary that the House of Representatives and the Senate gets to weigh in on what is $10 billion of your taxpayer dollars. Okay, so we've been getting along just fine. Why are you worried about this? They did the commission back in 1932 or whatever, 29 I think actually. Well, because this stands appropriated language was added in 1978. Now, let's think about for a moment how that got into the Constitution. Everybody know how marijuana got into the Constitution? Medicaid expansion got into the Constitution? It's for the veterans, right? It's for the kids. It's for the schools. Okay, same thing. What we had was, we had well, I won't even call it clear ballot language. We'll call it the introduction. I have a copy of the Kansas City Star where they were talking about the initiative, or I'm sorry, not the initiative petition. It was an HJR, just like this one, that was proposed, and all it said was, shall the people of the state of Missouri increase the amount of money going to the CART fund? Everybody know what the CART fund is? That's that part of your gas tax which goes to your county or your city. Okay? And so at the time, I think it was 3% or something like that, and they were going to raise it up to 10%. Who's not going to vote for that, right? But this language, this stands appropriated language, was hidden in the remainder of the ballot. Nobody said anything about stands appropriated. So the director of MoDot, Mike will remember this from the committee, said that that language was the will of the people because they passed it. And my comment was, how many people who voted for that, who thought they were voting for more money going to their county to grade the roads, knew anything about the stands appropriated language or would know what it meant? Very few. How many people here read all 38 pages of the marijuana bill? It's you and me, right? Because I read every page of it, and I said, there's no way any Missourian in their right mind is going to vote for this. There were 3 marijuana groups who were totally against this thing, and it still passed. Special interest, folks, and that's what this is about. $2.8 billion on I-70. I'm going to tell you how important that is right here in just a minute. If we're going to waste money on something, I'm going to be the first guy, especially borrowed money, I'm going to be the first guy to say infrastructure is where it's at, right? If I'm going to borrow against my great-grandchildren's future, it ought to at least go into something that they might get some use out of, right? So, I'm an engineer, and all my engineer friends cannot figure out why I'm against this $2.8 billion for I-70. Because it's $2.8 billion of general revenue. That's your income tax that's going for one project. that wasn't even on MoDOT's radar screen. MoDOT prepares a document called the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. It's 5-year STIP, okay? Anything that will be proposed goes into what's called the unfunded high priority need. And that's broke into 3 tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So the 5 years is projects that we are definitely going to fund. That STIP is projects we're definitely going to fund. Okay, we have the money to do it, and we're going to fund it. The high priority unfunded need is where we pull projects down into the STIP year after year. They may or may not move down ever. Highway 67, US Highway 67 is an example. The overpass down here on I-55. There's a lot of projects that have been in that high priority unfunded need for 40 years. Now, 3-laning I-70 in each direction is nowhere in the high priority unfunded need. Now, if we would have took the $2.8 billion and put it on the high priority unfunded need, we would have fully funded Tier 1, fully funded Tier 2, and mostly funded Tier 3 of the high priority unfunded need with that $2.8 billion. The high priority unfunded need is the stuff that's gone through your planning, your local planning groups. It's the things that we've talked about for years, the things we've promised the people of the state of Missouri. As soon as we get the money, we're going to do these projects. How did 3-lane and I-70 in each direction jumped over everything? Now you see why we need the word stands appropriated taken out of the commission authority. What's not in here, and it is going to be my next version of HJR 37, is to take some of that money that's currently going to MoDOT and spread it around through the counties. We call that the ballot candy. We see this all the time, right? What is it that's going to get voters to vote for it? So you got to put ballot candy in there for them. You have to get people to vote for something because they think they're going to get something out of it. I don't know why they can't just read the bill, realize it, and do the research like you all do. But the truth of it is, it's the only way we're going to get it passed. Now, here's my ask of you all. I will never find a lobbyist ever that's going to help me pass this as an initiative petition. Ain't going to happen. Because, first of all, even if they don't care one way or the other, they're not going to put money on something that doesn't do them any good. I'm not going to find some billionaire somewhere who's going to fund it. Doesn't do them any good. The only people I can rely on is groups like yours on the collection of the signature side of it. So what I'm asking is that if we get this ballot language approved, and I don't have to have an answer now, but probably pretty soon, would you all help collect signatures? You're not the only group I'm talking to about that. If you think that's important enough, if you think $10 billion of your tax dollars is important enough for the state legislature to weigh in on and to put some accountability on MoDOT on this, then please help me out with this. I have others, by the way. But with that, I would be more than happy to open the floor to questions. And so you hit it right on time, sir.
You said that money for I-70 was appropriated from the general fund?
General revenue.
Yeah, general revenue fund. MoDOT doesn't have the ability to get into the general funds.
Man,
Isn't
you
that voted on by the legislature?
You are right about that.
Okay, so the legislatures had to vote on that to get it approved. So,
Yep.
so that wasn't the commission or the director, but rather legislatively it got approved?
So whenever it left the House, it was $859 million, and I was against that. I voted against the transportation budget leaving the House of Representatives. I talked ad infinitum about it. went over to the Senate, and it turned from $859 million into $2.8 billion. When it came back over, I voted against it yet again. First of all, the $2.8 billion was never talked about on the House side. You got to keep in mind that was our bill. Now, why didn't the other members of the House of Representatives vote against it too? I don't know. You're going to have to ask them. You got a few of them around here that voted for it. But it's $2.8 billion of general revenue. Now, interstates have always been 80-20 split. The feds pay 80% and we pay 20%. The question you probably need to ask yourself is, well, is it necessary? Is it necessary? Hey, I get it. Maybe it's not I-44, maybe it's not I-55, but is it necessary? Well, I got a study that I brought with me if anybody cares to look. I-44 carries 9 times the freight tonnage that I-70 does. In fact, there's 4 highways in Missouri that carry more freight tonnage than I-70 does. Yeah, but there's a lot of traffic on I-70. Don't you remember the governor telling us that 1/3 of all the traffic in the state of Missouri goes on I-70 every day? You know what? He's right. But that 1/3 of that traffic is going from about Adams Dairy Parkway to the state line on the west side, and from about Wentzville to the state line on the east side. Everything in between is pretty much the same as it is on I-44. So as an engineer, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out the engineering reasons why we did what we did. But certainly $2.8 billion. And yes, you are correct. The only way that thing gets passed is if people vote for it, right? And voted for putting $2.8 billion of general revenue onto the interstate highway system without even bothering to call the feds up and saying, hey, we're going to hit the match on this, or you guys going to pay your part. Why would they do that if they can just raid the Missouri Treasury to do it? That's an extremely good question. I wish you would ask your representatives why they voted for it. Yes, sir.
And you tell me they're borrowing this money?
Okay, so you're going to hear a lot of talk about how much money we've got in the Treasury. You're going to hear a lot of talk about, well, we got $6 billion. We'd have 8 if we hadn't spent $2.8 billion on I-70. But let's think about that for a minute. A bunch of that's Uncle Sugar's money, right? Now, $2 billion of it is your income tax. But even that's just a little bit deceptive. We've had a pretty good couple of years. We remained to be an open state during COVID, right? And that helped us out a lot. But also, about $1 billion of that is holdover from where we allowed people to pay their taxes after the end of the fiscal year. So it looked like we had a really good year in 2022. But that's imaginary, because all that was money that instead of us collecting in 2021, we collected in 2022 past the end of the fiscal year. So we had $1 billion of that, and then we had a pretty good year, so we got $1 billion of that left over. And the remainder is pretty much FMAP money, ARPA funds, and a couple other pots of crazy, mad Joe Biden money that, $7.5 trillion in debt, which honestly, it just gets ate up in inflation, the 14%, because we spent $7.5 trillion in basically 2.5 years. So let's talk about that budget for just a minute, if I've got a minute or two. So the budget, when I first came in the House of Representatives, the first budget I worked on, I'm on budget committee, was $29.5 billion. This last one was $51.5 billion in 5 years. 5 years. I don't care if it's Uncle Sugar's money. I don't care if it's your money. I don't care whose money it is. My great-grandkids get to pay for that because it's all borrowed money. Not the state of Missouri didn't borrow it. The federal government borrowed it. But here's the reality. Sooner or later, somebody's got to pay for it. Right? I mean, that's just the way it works. I got a credit card. You got a credit card. We don't pay it. We can't skip over it like the federal government does. But here's the reality. Since I've been in the House of Representatives, we've added nearly $1 billion in brand new GR ask. In other words, we've added to our regular every year budget by almost $1 billion. $500 million of that is Medicaid expansion alone. Now, let's do the math. You got $4 billion. You're going to give $1 billion of it away every year to these brand new GRS without any other way of paying for it. What happens in 4 years? Who said broke? Yeah, it ain't hard. That's not hard math to figure out, is it? So 4 years from now, because of this spending, some of it was forced on us. Medicaid expansion was forced on us. Well, we're going to be out of money. We're going to be talking about cutting the budget. And here's why I know. My first year on budget, we had $225 million left over at the end of the fiscal year, and we all looked at each other and said, woohoo! We finally could put a little bit of money back in the rainy day fund. Okay, so let's assume we had 2% growth over the whole time that I hopefully will be in the state legislature, 8 years. You do that, you amortize that out. Do you come anywhere near $1 billion? Nope. So where is the money going to come from 4 years? I think we can stretch it into 5. Where's the money going to come from 5 years from now to fully fund what we're bound to add, teachers' minimum salary? Where's the money going to come from just to pay for Medicaid expansion? I don't know.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, ma'am.
You can get rid of about 3/4 of the DESE employees who are
Just so happened I had a similar discussion today when I met with the local superintendents. That's too long of a discussion, but I'd love to talk about that one. But yes, we are headed for. Yes, sir.
You need to subtract inflation and what are we?
Interest.
Well, the interest and our money is going worthless every month, more and more.
Yep. Yep. And so here's what you're going to hear in a very short period of time, because I was promised by MoDot that this entire 3-laning of I-70 is going to be done in 7 years. And it won't cost one dime more than $2.8 billion. Okay. Anybody ever heard of the Big Dig? Up in Boston? Yeah. Well, this is our version of it, folks. Because I guarantee you what's going to happen is, here in a very short period of time, let's give them 3.5 years, they're going to say, well, we ran into a problem. We found a rock. And Lord have mercy, everybody knows you ain't going to find no rocks in Missouri, so we need some more money. Because we can't just run it halfway across and stop it. We got to keep on going, right? Yeah, you've heard this before. How many times have we heard this, right? So that's what we're going to have. So $3.5 billion is probably not a stretch. You know, the entire interstate highway system in Missouri did not cost $3.5 billion. And we're talking about just adding one lane going in each direction on one of them. Well, that's supply chain problems. That's inflation. MoDOT brags about a 30% construction inflation rate. Brags about it. Oh, nothing we can do about that. When every state around us is right about 14%. So isn't it a reasonable question? Wouldn't someone intellectually curious enough want to ask the question, how come your inflation rate is higher, double than what Iowa is or whatever? Well, then you hear the excuse, oh, we've got the most road to take care of any state in the union and the lowest amount of money, blah, blah, blah. I get tired of hearing the same excuses. At the same time, they told us that they were $800 million underfunded, which was their excuse for getting the $550 million gas tax passed. You know how much money they had left over at the end of the fiscal year? At the end of the fiscal year for the last 10 years. So that takes us back into Jay Nixon times. An average of $992 million. Now, I asked this question, I've never gotten an answer to it. Not a good one. Wait a minute. I'm no higher finance guy. I'm just an engineer. But I think I can add and subtract. And I'm pretty sure $992 million is more than $800 million. So how can you be underfunded by $800 million and have $992 million left over in the bank at the end of the year? Anybody got an answer to that question?
I think I can figure out one of that.
I'm open.
It's something I really hate, the green initiative.
Yeah.
Electric vehicles don't
Yep.
consume gas, and there's less gas being consumed.
Well, we're not even talking about,
We're
the excuse about, well, we ain't got enough money.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is you can't tell me you're $800 million underfunded when you've got $992 million left in the bank at the end of the year. I don't know about you, but if I've got, let's make the numbers easy. If I've got $1,000 left over in the bank at the end of the year, I'm not $800 underfunded. I've got $1,000. Means I'm fully funded, right? Well, I could give you a lot of reasons why we do what we do, but I can boil it down to one thing. It's not in the interest of the people of the state of Missouri. It's in the interest of others who don't have the interest of the people of the state of Missouri in mind. Because wouldn't it have been the logical thing to do to take the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 high priority unfunded projects and fund them first? That would have been the logical thing to do. So, HJR 37, what I'm adding to it. You guys can read through it, but besides what I'm adding to it about increasing the amount of the gas tax that goes to the CART fund, is also to increase the commission to 8 members. We take out the stands appropriated language, but that's 8 congressional districts, no special thing there, but 1 member from each congressional district. Because right now they can all be from St. Louis. They can all be from Kansas City. They can all be from Hermitage. There's no rule that says that they can't. But at least, if we've got 1 from each congressional district, y'all stand a chance on the commission when it comes time to divvy up this money on these projects. So there's overpass down here for the aluminum plant. What is it? Is that aluminum plant? What?
Miranda.
400 jobs, folks. No brainer. We passed it as an earmark on our side, got yanked out. I thought we were all about jobs. Yes, sir.
By the commission it got yanked out?
Oh, no. No, that was by the governor.
Why?
I don't know. You have to read his letter. He every year he when he vetoes something, he writes a letter of why he vetoed it, and I guarantee you it's identical to the letter that he wrote for the previous one that he vetoed, which is identical to that one about us being fiscally conservative, right? Now it's hard to plead poverty when you just spent $2.8 billion on a project that even MoDot didn't want. Of course, they're not going to say that now. They're not going to say they didn't want it. In fact, they're going to tell you that it's always been on the books. Well, okay, show it to me. Because I have the high priority unfunded need from 2021, 2022, and 2020. And it ain't in there. Any other questions? Real quick, I probably ran over into Mike's time. And
You're doing good.
so, any other questions?
One more.
Yes, sir.
What about the toll road that they were talking about turning 70 in? Is this part of the trade-off on this, or what is the?
Somebody hold up the Constitution for me. Because that book right there, thank God, does not allow toll roads in the state of Missouri. Well, until some special interest gets an initiative petition out there and tells you it's all about the kids, right? You know, I get so sick of hearing that. Every excuse in the world. Well, it's about the kids. It's the veterans. That's why we're doing it. It's medicine for seniors. That's why we're doing it. How many of you are tired of hearing that excuse? And I'm of them for all them, right? I don't have a problem with kids, veterans, or any of that. But don't, what's the old saying about the shinola? Yes, ma'am.
So my special interest is in our children and the education of those. And that's my comment about DESE and an overbloated, unelected bureaucracy that is creating policies that the citizens have not voted for and expenditures there to support. I think our school boards locally have forgotten that they really represent us, and they think they represent the School Board Association or DESE or whatever. My concern is that the elected officials, and I'm not familiar with the way any of you have voted, but that SEL, Social Emotional Learning, which is really part of CRT and a Marxist agenda, in my opinion, has been not only imposed on our schools and our children and our teachers, but it has been funded. It's a very deep, dark hole that money goes into, and special interests are taking their share of. Besides SEL, and what really gets me is the sex education standards that came out. And there is a special place for people who groom and abuse our children in sexual ways. And K through 12, are you kidding me? Why does a kindergartner or a sixth grader need to know anything other than, why do any children need to be groomed for sexual activity in our schools? That's a parent's job. It's a community value, and it needs to be out. The next thing is the, under social emotional learning, the standards include, this came right out of the World Economic Forum, by the way, in the UN, and it speaks of me, we, and others. And under others, it teaches our children to be advocates. Advocates for what? Again, that is a local value that should be determined by parents and their church communities, and yet it's becoming law in the state of Missouri. What is going on? And that's for you too, Senator Moon. I would love for you to address this. I mean, and people don't know. Parents are busy. It takes two parents to provide for their family in the way that we were raised. They have no idea what's going on. I can ask parents across the city if they have ever heard of their child being taught to be an advocate, or their elementary school age children or junior hires having anything to do with sex. I mean, you know, other than the biological differences between boys and girls and how it all keeps us, on the planet over and over again. It is unnerving. And I hate to be emotional, and I hate to be so dramatic about it, but it seems to be perpetual and truly is sick. It's just sick, in my opinion.
So to let you know how important it is for you to get involved, there's a lady from Camden County. I think she's a We the People person also.
We're very familiar.
Okay. She showed up in my office by random. She was waiting for one of my suite mates to be there, and I said, "Well, come on in. Let's have a talk. I'm sitting waiting on something to happen anyway." And so she was telling me about that exact same thing, and I said, "Well, I know whose bill that is," and it was being carried by one of our more conservative members. So I said, "Hey, what's the deal with this?" I said, "There's a problem here, and we need to take a look at it." And so he goes, "Well, I think we got it worked out." And I said, "How? Is that language still in there?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "It's got to come out." Well, we didn't pass it on our side, but you hit the nail right on the head. If we don't pass something, then DESE just makes a rule to do it anyway. I don't know why in the world we are micromanaging our schools to start with. I mean, do what you want to do in St. Louis, but down in, what county are you from?
Cape Girardeau.
Cape County? Well, we're going to do a little bit different. right? We're going to let our superintendents and our teachers do what we pay them to do. And they're going to be responsible and answerable to our school boards. And there's a real big problem there, because you're right, I'm a former school board member, and I can tell you right now, most folks that get on school board are more worried about who's going to be on the starting five than they are about if Johnny can add and subtract. First school board meeting I ever went to, the two school board members right next to me tore their packet open at the school board meeting. Now, this is a pretty conservative part of the state, right? But we get folks who aren't really interested in being on there in the first place, as if it's some kind of prestigious thing, right? I mean, it's a job that you don't get paid anything to do, and no matter what call you make, half the people in the place ain't going to like it, right? So why bother? Well, we found out what happens when we don't bother, right? We get some of the crazy stuff that, like what you're talking about, but why in the world is the state of Missouri telling schools, your school district, how many hours they need to be in every year in class? We should set some standards and be done with it. Everything else we leave up to the local school districts to take care of how they're going to get to point A, from point A to point B, right? Who would have ever thought we would have to pass a law that says you can't mutilate your kids? Who would have ever thought we would have to pass a law in the state of Missouri that says boys can't play in girls' sports? Who would have ever thought we would have to do that?
With a Republican governor and Republican
super majorities, right? And Mike, how close was we to not getting that passed?
If you'd have been a fly on the wall, you'd have been really surprised.
You know who's responsible for making sure that got passed? That guy sitting right back there.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move on to Senator Moon. And Rita, you get it? Thank you so much. And you're going to hang out for a little while afterward? You won't get right on the road right away?
Not right away.
Not right away, but they be respectful of their time. They've got a several-hour trip.
Mike, I don't know how to turn it off, so it's ready to go. It's hot. It's a hot fire.
Okay, I don't know if Senator Moon needs any introduction because we sing his praises all the time around here. Senator Mike Moon, a Republican from Ash Grove, represents the 29th Senatorial District in the Missouri Senate. He represented the 157th District in the Missouri House of Representatives from 2013 to 2020. Senator Moon has been named the most constitutionally voting legislator by the Locke and Smith Foundation from 2017 through 2019 in the House and from 2020 to 2022 in the Senate. In 2014, he received a 100% rating from the Missouri Alliance for Freedom in 2014. Senator Moon was born in Kannapolis, North Carolina, and graduated from Western Branch High School in Chesapeake, Virginia. After graduation, he attended Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, where he met his beloved wife of 43 years, Denise. She's sitting right there. She's a sweetheart. Let's see. Senator Moon received his bachelor's degree in secondary education from Southwest Missouri State University in 1985. He and Denise have 5 children, Amanda, Brian, Aaron, David, and Jason, and are the proud grandparents of 4 beautiful granddaughters and 2 handsome grandsons. Senator Moon spent 27 years in marketing for Mercy Hospital and currently raises cattle on his farm in Lawrence County. He is an active member of High Street Baptist Church, where he serves as a deacon and Sunday school teacher and serves on mission committees. Welcome, Senator Moon.
If I did that right, I'm on. Good. I want to add one thing to my kids and grandkids. Halloween, today's the 31st, right? Amanda and Ian and our children flew from Guam. I think they're on the ground in Denver somewhere. They're serving as missionaries on the island of Guam, and it's pretty neat what the Lord's doing with them over there. So I'm glad that they're coming back for a short visit. Don, he did a great job explaining what he's hoping to have done with our funding of MoDot. It's not easy. And, if you look at the way that Missouri government works, it's very similar to how the U.S. government works. For some reason, we have delegated our authority to agencies.
Boo.
Did you say boo? My second year in the House, it was my first full year, the first year I could file bills. I took a paragraph that I'd written that would require us as legislators to vote on any new state or federal regulation, because I thought, heck, we've got all these agencies, they're doing things, and you can't elect them, as Don mentioned, and we have no authority over it, really. And so I took it, spread it around to a few people, and a Democrat came to me, and he said, hey, if you get this passed, it'll cut off all federal dollars. And I said, I know. That wouldn't work, though, because about 50% of our money is borrowed money from the feds. And, I mean, talk about broke. We're really broke already. And so I took it to another fella who I thought would be able to help me. And he tweaked it a little bit, added a sentence or two, changed a few words around, and said, I think this will work now. And so I started to pitch it. And the most common response I got back from people, legislators, was, how much more work is this going to cause us? And I thought, oh, man, I'm not going to get very far with this. And I haven't. In about 12 years, it hadn't gone anywhere. And so what I'm about to tell you tonight and speak to you about is kind of putting the responsibility back on y'all. Because you elect us with good intent, I believe. And oftentimes, we have good intentions to do things that will help us all, but we run into roadblocks for whatever reason. And I was looking over Patrick Henry's speech to the Virginia House of Delegates, and I encourage you to read that sometime, because they were under the big thumb of King George. And how were they going to change things? How in the world would they have any hope for their kids and grandkids and their posterity if they didn't do something? So part of his speech was, hey, we need to get our militia going, and we need to see what we can do to get out from this tyrannical iron fist of a king in England. And of course, you know the result. But how we have been slipping down a slippery slope over the last couple hundred years, we're liable not to be able to get out of it. But I think there's hope. If the Lord allows and He tarries, I believe that we can. Let me just make a few points real quick. I think I got a few minutes that I can maybe spare to address some of the things Don mentioned. One thing that I know you had, I think Ron Calzone was here a few weeks ago. Well, Don knows this, and Chris knows this. Others in the legislature know that we have a problem with the initiative petition process. It's partly signature gathering. I mean, that's good that we have to get signatures. And it's good that you have a voice. If you send us to the legislature and say, hey, this is what we want done, and we either ignore you or just can't get it done for whatever reason, then you have an opportunity. It takes a lot of work. It's a big job, but you can get it done. And so with this IP reform, you can get something on the ballot, and you have essentially 4 different population centers around the state who are going to drive the answer. And it's Kansas City, Columbia, St. Louis, and Springfield. Now, for some reason, it was a New Madrid County. I think they voted in favor of the marijuana issue. I still don't know how that happened.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you can fill me in later. Maybe it was because they were going to profit from growth or something. I don't know. But in any case, there's something else, it sounds like. In any case, those 4 major population centers are the ones who drive the vote. So all the guys with the money have to do is concentrate in those areas, convince enough people to vote their way, and they win. But those of us in the outlying rural areas, we're left in the dark, and we don't have any way we can overcome that unless we have a change in the initiative petition process. I'm not going to talk about that fully unless you have a question later, but Reining Calzone has a plan through CMR, concurrent majority ratification, and it mirrors the House. So that's all I'm going to say at this point, unless you want to know a little bit more later. Now, I want to say something too, because you guys have given me a lot of accolades, and I'm grateful for that. But it's not all true. Because I am just as flawed as anybody else. I've made so many mistakes. In fact, I'm not proud of some of the votes I've taken. I wish I could have some of them back, but I can't. So don't lift me up on a pedestal, because I can fall and crash just like anybody else can. I'm so grateful that you're paying attention, and that's what I hope that you will continue to do. Pay attention to what we're all doing, because you elect us, and if you turn a blind eye to us, watch out. Look what's happened to our state. So don't do that. Don't elect anyone and not pay attention. That goes all the way down to the school board, your commissioners, everybody. You got to pay attention. I'm so glad that you have those meetings on the list. Go to them, because very seldom do people show up. And if you don't show up, you're not going to know what's going on. I want to say something really quick about Medicaid expansion. You know, in our, I think I've got a copy of it here somewhere. Yep. It's glued to my book now. I've had it there so long. The Republican Party platform talks about in there that we should do all we can not to expand Medicaid. I was so frustrated this past session. We had a bill, Republican introduced a bill, Senate Bill 45. It was merged with Senate Bill 90 that was authored and proposed by a Democrat. They merged their two ideas together. In committee hearing, it was kind of funny in a way, but sad at the same time. The bill was presented, and I asked the bill sponsor, this had to do with, just tell you real quickly, had to do with extending Medicaid benefits to a woman who had a pregnancy ended for an additional 10 months. Does it sound like I'm spitting in there? Okay.
You need a drink?
So this language said that the additional medical care and benefits would begin when the pregnancy ends. So I asked, thank you, I asked the senator, what constitutes the end of a pregnancy? And it was about that much silence. And I said, how about an involuntary miscarriage? Oh yeah, that's one thing. I said, anything else? There was another pretty long pause. I said, how about an abortion? Oh no, that's not what we're talking about. I said, well, it's not clear. That it needs to be clarified in this bill that a live birth is what we're looking for, or an involuntary miscarriage, because sometimes those happen. They can't be helped. But not when you're going to send somebody across the state line for an abortion, or get a pill in the mail for an abortion, and then continue having taxpayers fund that. I said, that's not right. So that was pretty much the end of that conversation for nearly 2 months, going back and forth. You're going to add some language in there that clarifies it? No, can't do that. So anyhow, they relented, added the language, went over to the House. Some changes were made. And it's not because of my father's illness that this happened, but my father was ill. I know I was conflicted. I wasn't there in the Senate. I was there bodily, but my mind was elsewhere, and I told my staff, I'm going home. So I left for a week. During that week, guess what happened? The changes that were made took the language, pro-life language, out of the bill, brought it up for a vote, sent back for the Senate. They passed it. So now, that's not a good laugh. That's a sad laugh. We're now on the hook to care for women who potentially have abortions. And you say, we're an abortion-free state. No, we're not. I'm so tired of people saying we're an abortion-free state. Yeah, we've stopped surgical abortions, but they can get it through the mail. And they can go to their hotel room or their bathroom or wherever and languish and sometimes die. We still got problems, and we need to work on that. So you might have heard, I'm going to say this part, I wasn't thinking about it till now. When I came back and I found what they had done to Senate Bill 45 and 90, I was not very happy. And yeah, I took a little while to talk about it, to talk about what we're doing and what we're not doing and how pitiful it is. And you'll hear lobbyists, news reporters probably, some legislators say, well, you know, if Moon doesn't get what he wants his way, he's not going to do anything. Well, maybe. But that was pitiful, though. To call ourselves Republican, that's pretty pitiful. I'm not finished with that one yet. Don mentioned the veto letters. Just real quick, our state steals from people. The Department of Revenue has been complicit in opening audits and then finding a business owner out of tax compliance. And they take the money because they can. There was a fellow in Kansas City. I learned when I think it was my second year in the House, they put me on the Ways and Means Committee and heard this guy say that they came in and did an audit. He said, come on in, I don't have anything to hide. So they found that he was $220,000 out of compliance, that he owed the state $220,000 in taxes. He said, I don't have that kind of money. And it was really kind of funny because there were conflicting rules that the department had put together. Same business now. Some were paying taxes and others weren't. Calls to the department say, no, you don't owe taxes. You don't have to collect. And they were user taxes. So if you were, coming to that business, you would pay the tax voluntarily because it was a membership-based facility. So in any case, they found him owing $220,000. He said, I don't have the money. Over about a month, they did some bartering back and forth, and they said, well, okay, we think $36,000 is the right amount. Now, $36,000 is a lot of money to me. $220,000 would have been devastating. Anybody hazard a guess how much money this man had in the bank? $36,000, and they took it all. And so I started on a venture trying to get the money back for him. We couldn't get a bill passed, so 3 years ago, I think, no, it was my last year in the House, so yeah, 3 years ago, I think you guys voted with me, put $140,000 in the budget, line item, specifically to pay these people back. It passed the House and passed the Senate. Veto. You know why? The state couldn't afford it. $140,000 is peanuts. I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but they're funny. If you ask me about it a little bit later and we have time, I'll tell you something. We did this twice. Once when I was in the Senate, and that's a really funny story. I'll save that for later laughs. Senate Bill 681 had components in there for social emotional learning. Now, I'm not going to tell you who.
Oh, go ahead.
Why not?
I think we have an idea.
You do?
I don't.
Okay, I'll tell. This is sad. I shouldn't say that. This bill started at 16 pages. Now, this was one that was sponsored by a Republican, but the co-sponsor, I don't know that it was actually co-sponsor, was a Democrat. It's like, how do you put that together? Now, I'm not saying all Democrats are bad, because they're not. But there's some Democrats, and this one specifically, wanted to do some things they're horrendous, to give state control over our children, and to allow them to go to this is kind of a supervised daycare, so that they can be indoctrinated by all sorts of different whims and fancies.
I want to know who that is. I want to know who that is.
Who is it?
You need to tell us who
Okay,
that is.
I will.
Public record.
I will. Okay, so here's the part that I thought really is crazy. First, the bill started with 16 pages. When it was Truly agreed and finally passed, it was 166. Because 16 pages, you just can't get enough in there. And I'm gonna tell you why I think we get to that in just a minute. Do I have time? Because I haven't even started my presentation.
We might go over it. If we do, I'm not
Okay.
gonna stop it. 'cause
All right.
we want you
Right.
to say.
All right, well.
Why do you have to pass it to know what's in it?
Okay,
That's
Nancy.
how that works. That's right.
Okay,
That's
Nancy.
how it works.
All right, so we get to the time where the stuff hits the fan, and I didn't know what was in the bill, because you go from 116 pages, and 16 pages is a lot to read too when you got gobbledygook in it. I mean, it can put you to sleep. So 166, I didn't know what was in the bill, so I can't vote yes on a bill I don't know anything about. So I got up and I started questioning the sponsor, and Senator O'Laughlin said, I don't know. Why don't you ask the other lead on this? And it was a Democrat, Lauren Arthur. And so I did. And I don't know how long it went. It was an hour at least. I don't know that we actually made it through the bill, but it still passed. And it's just, I don't know if I can put it all into words, but here's part of what I'm hoping that you will do. You're paying attention, I know, because you're here. And this is where it gets tough. If you see, I'm going to give you the ability, I'm going to give you the leeway to hold me accountable, even though I don't represent you per se in my district. I want you to have the liberty to say, hey, Mike, I heard what you said. I saw the bill that you filed. I saw the vote that you cast, and we think you're wrong. Now, whether I'm wrong, right or wrong, that's not the issue. You're my boss, especially if you elect me. You're my boss, and I work for you. And so you have the authority to yank me back. Now, you can't because you can't vote for me, but still, very few people pay attention. So you be the different ones. You be the ones who pay attention to not just me, but all those in your area that you can actually cast a ballot for. Ask them questions. First, get to know them. Build a relationship with them so that when you start dogging them, and that's a nice way to say it, and you should, at least you'll have a relationship together and it won't come off abrasive, hopefully. So anyway, let me get started with this. So back to this, Patrick Henry, I think he was wanting to get people involved and to know that they had a problem in Virginia. The whole colony system was in trouble. This is not the current state constitution. This is the current color. And this is really kind of funny. I'm not going to be able to use two hands, but that's close. See the thickness right there? That's the U.S. Constitution. The rest of it is Missouri, with a few pages stuck in between. Bingo, marijuana,
Right to farm.
the railroads, the what else?
Right to farm.
Right to farm. A lot of stuff that shouldn't be in there. And that's why initiative petition reform is important, so that we can at least put a stop on the things that shouldn't be there and hold to what we should be doing. I meant to ask you this question. Do you believe that the Missouri Constitution matters?
Yes.
Good. Do you believe that when a legislator raises their right hand and swears an oath to support the Constitution, that they should actually do that and they should be held accountable for that? Here's the oath. I'm not going to read all of it, even though it's pretty short. The thing I want to talk to you primarily about, point out, is that it says that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Missouri. That's significant, because this is where we as elected individuals get our marching orders. And yeah, talk about stuff that will put you to sleep. This will put you to sleep. And some of it I still don't understand. Nonetheless, I swore an oath to support it, and if I don't understand it, then woe be to me if I vote something is against it. So in Article 3, this is the nitty-gritty part, where this is what gets us into trouble and can also keep us out of trouble. In Article 3, Section 23, it says, no bill shall contain more than one subject, which shall be clearly expressed in its title. And just a quick example, Don and Chris may remember this, back in 2018. Representative Gene Evans introduced a bill that would give certain Olympic athletes a tax deduction. And when I thought about that originally, I thought, that's not a bad idea, because Olympic athletes work pretty hard. If they get a gold, silver, or bronze medal, there's also a cash prize attached to it. And so Missouri would say, you don't have to pay the 6% income tax. Now it's a little bit less than that, but whatever the tax, you won't have to pay income tax. This bill changed when it went to the Senate. These guys were slick. They added to a tax deduction a tax increase. And I thought, how did that jive? Well, here's the genius in it. They changed the title to state revenue. Tax deduction, tax increase, both state revenue. So they solved the problem, right? Well, let's look and see what the Constitution says. No law should be passed, let's see, no law should be passed except by bill. No bill shall be so amended in its passage through either house as to change its original purpose. So the original purpose of that bill, 1460 was a number in 2018, was a tax deduction for certain Olympic athletes. It was changed to state revenues, which would allow for the increase in the fuel tax. So if you were a legislator, would you say, I swore an oath to support the Constitution? That's a tough one. Yes or no? You're the legislator.
No.
You swore an oath. I see some head shaking no. Are there any yeses? You'd say yes or no?
You mean to support it?
Would you support the bill?
No.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement then. So Senate Bill 14 or House Bill 1460 actually had a referendum clause added to it too. Went to the ballot, and if you remember back in 2018, you had 3 questions to answer one yes or no on. First, it was, do you want to give the State Patrol an additional $188,000 or $1 million for operating fund? Just like the veterans and the seniors and the kids, who doesn't like the State Patrol? And you can't vote against the State Patrol, right? That was the ballot candy. So a lot of people thought, oh yeah, I gotta vote for that. And the second thing was, do you want to give have a tax increase on the fuel of 12.5 cents? I think it was a whole kit and caboodle back then. And the third was, do you want to give certain Olympic athletes a tax deduction? Well, that was a conundrum, I thought. It violated Article 3, Sections 21 and 23. This is 21 here. And so it was an easy no for me. And fortunately, even though it passed, the voters saw through it and they voted against it. But then, the legislature knows best, correct? We threw it on you anyway. Pretty sad. So now you're paying 5 cents of an eventual 12.5 cent increase on your fuel tax. And we're still not finished with that one yet either. Don mentioned, someone brought up, I think it was Don too, talked about the SAFE Act. That was Senate Bill 49. These 2 young ladies, Chloe Cole on this side and Luca Hine on my right, from California and Nebraska, they were abused by the medical system. And they came to Missouri, to Jefferson City, to help us to forward this bill, to encourage other legislators to understand that parents have rights and should be in control of the children's upbringing. But when they are put in places where they have to succumb to abuse of the medical community, that's not right. And that was an issue and back and forth on a lot of this was, wait a minute, parents have the right to raise their kids any way they wish, yeah, but not abuse them. And that's what this was doing. So Luca and Chloe came to Missouri and helped us to forward this. Now, Don, I have to correct something you said. Because some people say, you passed Senate Bill 49, right? And I say, nope, I didn't. It took 100 people. And I know you knew this, so he was giving me a good pat on the back. I know that's what he was trying to do. And I'm grateful for that. I am glad we got the bill passed. But it took at least 100 votes, 18 in the Senate and 82 in the House. Now, here's something that's really funny about the Senate. Before this past session, it was very unusual to get someone to co-sponsor a bill in the Senate, because once you put your name on it, you couldn't take it off. Even if it morphed into a 166-page bill and it went haywire, your name's still on it. It looked like you still support it. So through some conversation and kind of knife in the ribs, we were able to get the leadership to say, okay, we'll consider that. You can put your name on it, and up until the truly agreed and finally passed, that's the last vote of all in the chamber, you can take your name off. This is the funny part. We had an overnight on getting this bill through the process, and it nearly didn't happen. There were a lot of things that went on, but when I think it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, we went back in the chamber, and we still had 2 more changes that needed to take place before the bill was actually finished. And I asked other senators, put your name on it, co-sponsor. Before the bill was passed, we had 18 Senate co-sponsors. All we needed to pass it, but it's unusual. And partly because of the change that was made, but partly because there are folks out there saying, I passed Senate Bill 49, the SAFE Act. But that's okay. I don't care. That's just the way the system works. But I'm just telling you today, if someone comes up to you and says, I passed this or that should be a red flag. Now, they may not be meaning it in a bad way, but just that it takes 100 votes, at least, out of both chambers to get that done.
I have a question while you're flipping through the slides. So you're talking about when someone says that they passed a bill. Is it true that the leadership in at least the House, is it true in the Senate, and maybe you could answer that they were warned not to discuss who voted which way on certain bills? Did Walker threaten people with that?
I can speak for the Senate. 2 years ago, we had a good time forcing roll call votes. And they were votes that a Republican should have voted for or against. Some, because of different reasons, and I can't tell you what all they are, voted contrary to the way they should. And some took those scorecards, they actually tallied them as the votes were being called out. The House has 2 signboards where they push a button, it's electronic voting. In the Senate, it's an audible voice vote. And so some had done the tally marks, and almost immediately after the votes were cast, they put them on social media. Which, you could say good and bad about that. Those who were on the wrong side didn't like it. And I don't like to be on the wrong side either. What that does, though, anybody familiar with FACL, Foundations for Applied Conservative Leadership? That's some of the things that they do, and they want to have done, because if I know I'm coming to your group and I'm going to be on a hot seat, at least if I know in advance, I'm going to see if I can do things right first before I get to you, and that way you won't be so angry with me. More of that needs to happen, actually. But I'll tell you this, in closing that, until you have something else here. Politicians don't like it, because a lot of times we're on the hot seat and it's uncomfortable. And so I like scorecards when they're used for that, and I think there'll probably be more on this next session. There's going to be a lot of stuff that has to happen, because we have a great divide in the Republican Party on the Senate side, and it's not good. And you need to know who's on the right side and who's on the other side. And if you're able to hold individuals accountable, you got to do it, because if you don't, we're going to have the same old thing happening every year. year in and year out.
How could you be an informed voter if you don't know how your representative or senator voted?
Well, you can look at the journal.
Now that takes a lot
It's
of
unrealistic in the age of technology to
Now-
expect that to be kept hidden.
Now, I say that kind of halfway tongue-in-cheek. You'll have to repeat that because I was forming my opinion. But let me say this
It's
first.
unrealistic for politicians to expect that or demand that to be hidden in the age of technology, and it's
Okay.
our right to know.
Okay, here's something that I'm hoping to do with rules this year, and that will make it easier for you. We're antiquated in the Senate. The House is great. They have things, live video, live audio. You can do one or both. In the Senate, you can hear, but I still have trouble sometimes thinking, who is that senator talking? And so we're going to put forward a rule change that it'll be live video. Because why shouldn't you? There's a rule in the Senate now. If you want to see a video in an exchange between two senators, one of the two senators has to request it. And for that to be publicized, both senators have to agree. But we're a one-party state where I can record your conversation and put it out there anywhere. It doesn't matter. But the Senate's different. And so hopefully we'll get that changed, and where we should be known for what we say and do.
Accountable?
Jan? Accountable, yes.
I was just gonna, I don't know how much more time you have, but at the state conference last summer, you did a yay nay kind of thing. Do you remember doing that little exercise?
Yeah.
I don't know if we would have time for that. I think maybe they would learn a little bit from that.
Denise, would you look at my computer bag and see if that brown envelope is there? And if it is, maybe I'll have enough to do it. Okay. Could you bring that up? Thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
I'll make a brief comment on that.
Yes.
Mike, on the House side, every vote is recorded on the third read, and that's available. Go to the bill, and then you can get the roll call vote of that on third read. Now, you've heard the old saying, I voted for it before I voted against it. Okay, so anything before that, perfection, for instance, is a voice vote, and that's left to the call of the speaker. And so a lot of times folks say, well, I voted for it on perfection, but I had to vote against it on third read. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean a thing. But all our votes are public record, and you can go straight to the bill. And so those are easy to get to on our side. His side, not so much.
And I really want to host sometime, you guys know I'm crazy about it. So if you go to house.mo.gov, just get on there. I'm going to say it again and again, and senate.mo.gov, and just play around on the website. Start looking for different stuff. And you can listen to every session live. You have to do that. Yes, Michelle.
I was just going to say to you, this last legislative session was really frustrating, and I'm sure it was for you, but for a lot of the grassroots as well. But you did provide some comedic relief when you got out on the floor and held the floor for extended periods of time, just simply because you know that those people were frustrated in that room with you, but you continued to hold the floor and hold your own with them, and so thank you for
I didn't know it was
strong.
comedy.
It was amongst the grassroots because you were kind of giving them a dose of their own medicine, and we kind of appreciated that a little bit.
To Michelle's point, oftentimes I have read a book before. I think I've read a couple. One book this year was my favorite. It was mostly pictures. But those pictures, if you'd seen them, would have broke your heart, because it was about the shot for COVID and how elite athletes were either coerced in some manner or believed they needed to have it. And then within hours sometimes, days in some cases, they collapsed on the field of play. Heart attacks, blood clots. Like, what in the world? And so that was a book that I really wanted to get through. Who heard it? I don't know. But it's still out there, and I think it's coming back. There are already some hospitals in the state who are wanting to reinstitute the masking requirement. And so we're not finished with that. I hope we learned enough through the first time that we will stand up on our own two legs and do something about it. Let me get through this. If we still have time, we'll go to the exercise. So I've already said this. Have you ever looked at the Declaration of Independence and looked at the 27 grievances?
Yep.
Yeah. I just reread those, and we're not under the same oppression, but we still are. We're under tyrannical rule.
Amen.
And Don gave a good example about MoDot. Now, MoDot does a lot of good things. I mean, we have pretty good roads, I think. If you hear an argument that our roads aren't as good as some of the neighboring states, I've been in some of the neighboring states, and I think Missouri has excellent roads. I'm really pleased with them, and so I think our crews do a good job with that. And it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, or Green Party, or Constitution Party, whatever. We're all complicit because we're allowing it to happen.
Amen.
And I'm telling you, this is what I started out with, that really it's our responsibility as elected individuals, but also it's your responsibility too. You have to know what our authority is according to the Constitution. And if you don't, get to know it. I think Tom's coming. He'll talk about the Missouri Constitution particularly. Know what you need to hold us accountable to. And I've given you 2 snippets. Boy, if we would just follow the one subject rule and don't amend beyond its original purpose. I wrote only 16 constitutional objection letters this year. I could have written more, but I kind of got to where it's like, who's going to pay attention? You can read them in the journal, but we've got problems. And the problem is us, and I'm saying that collectively because you have to share the responsibility. You can unelect us. It's hard. Don, Chris, I don't know if y'all had opposition. I've had an opposition every time I've been out of the chute. I think I'm going to have a candidate to oppose me this time. It keeps us sharp, and really we probably should never go unopposed. And maybe you should oppose us sometimes too. Okay, so just a few things. Now, these may be small, but if you open a business, you got to get permission from the government. You do. You can't open a business without it because you got to pay your fair share, right? We also don't own anything. Your cars, if you have boats, your property, you don't own it. You're paying rent on it. There have been some attempts to get some of this changed, but we fight against our own government. I think I've got it in here. Let me see. It's not specifically, but I want to bring this up now because I believe it may be a good place to do it. Senate Bill 190. Have you heard that bill number recently? It was tax relief for senior citizens. I confess, I'm a senior citizen now. Hopefully I'll live long enough to enjoy some things out of that. But in any case, this bill, it was poorly written. It also violated the first, well, actually the second, article, I think I might have it in there. I may have it. Let me hold off a minute. Let me see what's in there. You pay taxes on your income. Okay, here it is. It was right next door. Didn't see it. This is Article 1, our Bill of Rights, Section 2. And I encourage you, when you read any of the Bill of Rights, that you preface it with this sentence, this declaratory sentence that says, in order to assert our rights, acknowledge our duties, and proclaim the principles on which our government is founded, we declare that all constitutional government is intended to promote the general welfare of the people. I think we'd all agree with that. That all persons have a natural right to life and liberty, pursuit of happiness, Declaration of Independence verbiage, and the enjoyment of the gains of our own industry. That all persons are created equal and are entitled to equal rights and opportunity under the law. And I'm going to stop there for a second because that's what's at issue with Senate Bill 190. It could also be reread to equal application of the law. I've had people argue, well, wait a minute. we deserve tax breaks. And you do. I think we all do. And they say, we are on fixed incomes, and there are some other people less than senior of age on fixed incomes. They deserve the same breaks. And if they don't get them, then it's not an equally applied law. And it's unconstitutional. It violates Article 1, Section 2. The last part of this says that to give security to these things is the principal office of government, and that when government does not confer the security, it fails in its chief design, and we have failed you. And I hope that we can get some changes made properly to Senate Bill 190. It's signed, it's law. I think only 5 or 6 counties have implemented it so far because it's so vague. They don't know how to interpret it. In fact, one county close to St. Louis implemented, and they put a provision in there that if you own a home above a certain amount, you don't qualify. How is that fair? It's not. One portion is you have to be eligible for Social Security. Well, guess what? If you've worked 40 quarters, 10 years, you're eligible for Social Security. But they're not going to get it because they're not 62. There are some people who are infirm and disabled that probably they should have that tax relief too, but they're not going to get it either. Well, I guess it depends on how the county's interpreted. And so there's a lot of problems with it. I personally did not support it because of that right there. And I'm taking a little bit of heat for it, but that's okay. I can justify it, I think. Okay, how many of you, if you will, go along with me, how many of you can finish the sentence here? This is from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And I heard someone say this, and I think that it's probably appropriate. Any idiot can understand it, right? So it's self-evident. I mean, it's plain as day. That all men, you got it, are created equal. That they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, this is where it gets a little tough, doesn't it? That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. And there's another significant part to this. Anybody remember? Deriving their just powers from
the consent of the governed.
Consent of the governed. If I had a prize, you'd get it. That's good. Consent of the governed. Now, who is the governed? It's really all of us, because we're all governed in some sort of fashion. And that's why I go back to what I started with. Your involvement is critical. And unless you make your voices heard at the county level, the school board level, the state level, the national level, then we're not going to be effective. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's expensive. And sometimes we lose friends because of it. That's unfortunate. But that's what it takes to hold on to our liberty, to hold on to our country. So back to that question, should we follow the oath we swear to uphold? You bet your bottom dollar we should. So do you trust the government? No. Oh, come on.
How long have I been?
Yes.
And that's what my final point here is, that if you've read the scripture and if you fast forwarded and gotten to the Revelations, you know what's happening. And you know how all this ends up. Not exactly probably, but you know what's coming down the pike. And so I just encourage you to remember Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your paths. I know that firsthand. and I don't know what your beliefs are. I know some, because I've heard you speak and I've talked to you before. But I don't know each of you individually, know your heart and your relationship with the Lord. But I just encourage you, if you don't know the Lord as your personal Savior today, that should be first priority. Because this stuff is real. The Bible is clear on what's going to happen. And anyway, I just encourage you on that. Now, Jan, do we have time or are we out?
Well,